Welcome to the Butterfly Effect. I'm Chris Horner. This is stage 2 of Tour of Romandy, day 3. Now today's race, 163 kilometers, 5 categorized climbs on the stage, but it's the last 2 starting with 30 kilometers, 4.5 kilometers long, over 7%, and then that last one at 13 kilometers to go at 1.5 K, again over 7%. We know it's going to be an exciting stage. So if you got time, you definitely want to tune in to the last 30 kilometers of today's race because it was action-packed. But let's take us back to the beginning of the cameras because we see 3 riders in the breakaway. Julian Bernard's there from Trek Segafredo, Gleb Brusinski from Astana's there, and Tom Bull from Tudor Cycling. Now these 3 riders only have 3-4 minute lead throughout the early parts of today's stage 3, and the team chasing, when the cameras come back, Jumbo Visma, bunch of knuckleheads in my book right now for chasing. Now you're like, Chris, they have the time trial world champion back there, and he's only 1 second out of first place. He's sitting third on the GC, so of course they should chase and try to blow away all the sprinters back there. I don't like this tactic at all because tomorrow is a time trial. Tomorrow's time trial stage is only 19 kilometers long, but when you're the world time trial champion, if you can go with the front group here today, you can certainly have a better shot at winning the individual time trial tomorrow, and that'll put you in the race leader's jersey, right? If you can get in the race leader's jersey after tomorrow's stage, now you got a fresh team that can look after you for the big mountain stage that comes after the individual time trial. So I don't like this tactic right now, and I don't understand why the director from Jumbo Visma would do it unless he fell out of bed this morning and hit his head. Because when you look, you got to believe back there Team Ineos would ride the front when they have a rider like Ethan Hayter who can sprint, who can make it over the climbs, and the kid can time trial too. So wouldn't Team Ineos ride the front anyways? Because they already did on stage 1 and blew the whole field up. That's how they dropped all the sprinters in yesterday's stage finish. And so why wouldn't they do it today? And if they won't do it, when you look at the picture, there's Movistar there in the picture right next to Ineos. So you know Movistar will pull on just about any mountain stage in the European peloton when there's racing. So there's no reason for Jumbo Visma to be big knuckleheads up here pulling when especially they don't have the deepest talent of climbers on their team here at Tour of Romandy. But they're back there pulling. The gap's down to about 3 minutes when the cameras come on. Then we're going to see an interview from Ethan Hayter at about 65 kilometers to go that he did before the stage. Here he's talking about yesterday's stage finish, saying how it got a little messy, it wasn't quite perfect, but he has really good legs. He's looking forward to today's mountain stage because he's climbing good. And he says yesterday just came up where it just didn't work out perfect. And if you look at under 1K to go, when I show you the picture there from yesterday's stage, he's up there at the front. Jonathan Narvaez was there at the front until about 175 meters to go when he slipped out of his pedal. And he could have been there helping out a sprinter. But you have to remember, when you're talking about Team Ineos, it's not like they're coming with this fabulous lead-out squad. Eli Viviani's their pure sprinter here, and he keeps getting dropped because Ineos is going too fast on the front. So they're not looking really to come into these finishes with Ethan Hayter having a spectacular team wrapped around him. He basically has to do the finish on his own when we're talking about yesterday's stage 1. And like I said, at about 900 meters, 950 meters to go, I'm pretty certain I saw his mug up there at the front, just behind the Soudal Quick-Step guys, and probably just got boxed in, maybe overlapped wheels, realized it was safer to just let off the gas because he wasn't going to win yesterday's stage 1 and save it for today. So when we finish his interview, he's asked one more important question. Can you beat Ethan Vernon if you can't drop him on the climbs? Well, Ethan Hayter says, matter of fact, if everything goes perfect, I don't need to drop him on the climbs because I can beat him in the sprint. All right, that was a great interview there from Ethan Hayter. Now let's get back into the racing because with about 45 kilometers to go, this is when we see Tom Bull. He starts getting dropped from the 2 riders in front, and he suffered big time to try to get over the climb, but just can't find the form as Tom Bull leaves the 2 riders up front. Now with about 30 kilometers to go, as we're coming in to this Category 2 climb, things start getting interesting. There's curb-to-curb battle coming into the climb. Then as we start the climb proper, you look at the back of the peloton. There you go. There's Ethan Vernon back there, yesterday's stage 1 winner and race leader's yellow jersey, coming out the back, and he has Joseph Cherney that won the time trial prologue stage here on day 0. Now with those 2 riders coming out the back, along with Eli Viviani back there and Sergio Higuita along with Chris Froome, with that group coming out the back, you know when the cameras come back up to the peloton, And we see Hessing pulling full gas as they're rounding up the last two breakaway riders of today's stage 2. We know everything is up for grabs now. The stage wins up for grabs. The race leader's yellow jersey's up for grabs. And we know the battle for the GC is going to highlight somewhere throughout the finish of this climb and this last Category 3 climb that's coming up with 13 kilometers to go. Hessing's doing a marvelous job on the front, thinning out the group back there as we see riders coming out the back left and right, the pure sprinters, but not the GC favorites. They'll go over the top, drop down the descent. Then with about 18 kilometers to go, this is when we start seeing Ethan Hayter, along with a few of his teammates, they start coming up to the front because they got to get serious for this last 1.5 kilometer climb that's coming up at over 7%. We come flying into this climb. It's going to be a left hairpin turn, and Hessing's doing a full sprint right up there battling with the DSM guys. Hessing's wins the battle. They come out of the turn with two of the Jumbo-Visma riders in the front, Steven Kruijswijk and Tobias Foss, their race leader who they're riding the front for here on stage 2. Now right away, Astana attacks with Tejada. Tejada attacks, and he's got Michael Woods in the back there about fourth wheel. He does the big acceleration, gets a gap on the peloton, and we see Foss look over left straight there at Steven Kruijswijk, hoping Steven Kruijswijk's going to take the front. Steven Kruijswijk goes to the front and starts pulling the front of the peloton for his race leader, Tobias Foss. And then shortly after that, we see Thomas Glaude come flying out of the left side of the peloton, straight past his teammate Steven Kruijswijk, and bridges up to Michael Woods' group up there. Woods gets on the gas and he makes the group even smaller as he's accelerating hard. Got it down to 3 riders. Himself, Mühlberger, and Thomas Glaude. Now those 3 riders got a little bit of a gap on the peloton behind, and then we're going to see it's Adam Yates, UAE Team Emirates, that's closing the gap, accelerating in the peloton. With about 200 meters to go, he wraps up the 3 in front. Now all of a sudden we got a selection. Let's go to the back of the peloton because there was some action happening right around that 400 meters to go to the top of this climb, and we'll see it's Steven Kruijswijk coming out the back. He's got some company that could help him get back on in the form of EF Education. Casado's there, and we see it's Magnus Cort Nelson there. We go up over the top of the KOM. UAE Team Emirates are leading over the top with about a 20-25 rider group up there. Then Egan Bernal is just a little bit split off the Team Ineos rider. He'll be able to bridge and close back up to that group. But we look at the next gap behind Egan Bernal, and we see it's Tobias Foss back there fighting. So up front, when we look at that front group, Jumbo-Visma only have 1 rider, Thomas Glaude, in that front group. Tobias Foss back there trying everything he can to close the gap. And we look further back, it's the 3rd rider for Jumbo-Visma. He's in the last of this group, probably 60-70 guys back there, and he's basically just with the 2 EF Education riders trying to close the gap. So Jumbo-Visma riders are split across the top of this KOM as they're going over the top. Now going down the descent, we'll see that it take about 9.5 kilometers to go, and this is when Tobias Foss will close up to that front group. But when we go back to the top of the KOM with the EF Education's Casado, he's accelerating hard on the pedals. You see right there, Steven Kruijswijk, he can't quite close the gap. You see him as the gap to the EF Education riders extending, and you're like, what is going on? Steven Kruijswijk, close the gap or you're going to be in trouble. Well, let's look back at that picture. Let's look down at his derailleur. His derailleur's wrapped all the way back, right? That means he's in the small chainring up front. He can't get it to shift to the big chainring, and that's why the EF Education duel up front is leaving him behind. He finally gets to shift to go up into the big chainring. You see the derailleur move forward closer to the front pedals there as it's pulling harder going up into the big chainring. Problem is, once he gets it into the big chainring, the gap to the EF Education riders already opened up. Now we go up to the front where I told you the group's getting bigger and bigger. We see it all coming back together. And then we go back to Steven Kruijswijk coming out of this left turn with about 7-8 kilometers to go. And we see the gap up front to the EF Education riders is just too big back there for Steven Kruijswijk to close. Now we start looking up front at the peloton. What happened as they all came back together? It only slowed up for about a second coming down this descent. Then we saw attacks from Bahrain Victorious. We saw attacks from Jaco Alula Sobrero, who threw in a fast, dangerous right turn there, just fast, flowing through there on the pedals the whole time. You know the Italian rider wants maximum gap, but he gets brought back from behind. It's still all together. Now all of a sudden we come into the bottom of the climb. The road starts always bumping and going up a little bit towards the finish, and there's tacks coming left and right all over the place. EF Education duo back there of Casado and Magnus Cort Nelson were the last guys to bridge on to make this group up front. About 50, 60 riders up there. But they're still way in the back. Now up front, we start seeing attacks. Michael Woods is throwing in another attack going up this little climb here. Then everything gets under control with the two Jonathans going to the front. It's Jonathan Castroviejo up there and Jonathan Narvaez up there for Ineos that are trying to control the pace here because Ethan Hayter is in the group. They know if they can bring him to the line, Ethan Hayter has a shot at winning. And when we look at the picture a little further back in the middle of the peloton, you see Ethan Hayter there and you see Egan Bernal with two Ineos riders on the front with the two Johns. Now with those two Johns pulling on the front, they're not going to stay there too long, because all of a sudden we're going to see an on form right here of Gino Mater from Bahrain victorious. He comes flying by on the right side, sitting down on the seat while he's powering past Casado and Vares. Now, those two can't do much because Casado all of a sudden blows. Vares is doing everything he can to try to close the gap. And then the Ineos rider blows. Now it takes back there Jaco Alula to try finally close the gap up to Gino Mater. They'll do that, and then everything will come back together. Big time attack still coming left and right all over the place. Two Trek Segafredo riders threw in some more attacks, and then finally with about a K.5 to go, everything starts to get back under control as we see Jaco Alula on the front, and then we see three Ineos riders. Egan Bernal's in first position there, second place in the peloton, as the Jaco Alula riders trying to wrap everything and keep it under control to finish this off in a sprint. Now it takes about 1.2 kilometers to go, and Egan Bernal has to hit the front. This is a dangerous time to be at the front with 1.2 kilometers to go, because your sprinter Ethan Hayter's now third position, which means he only has two lead out guys in front of him. One's Egan Bernal. We know he's not 100% on form. The other one, Narvaez. Narvaez has been spectacular throughout today's stage, trying to control everything for Ethan Hayter. But what does he have left in the legs? How long can Egan Bernal go? So Ethan Hayter right now has to start doing some tactical math equations real fast, trying to figure out what's going to happen with his teammates and how deep can he get them into today's race. Now we look a little bit further back, it's Bardet sitting on Ethan Hayter's wheel, and then we look, it's Ayuso UAE Team Emirates, and he's bumping with Mühlberger. Now after he gets done bumping with Mühlberger, he's going to bump over to the left with Bardet, but they're going to come into the roundabout. As they do, you see the DSM riders, he gets one extra help from Bardet because he has only coming up there, and that'll push Ayuso further back. Up front as they come out of this roundabout with probably, I'm going to say about 800 meters to go. Taking a little bit of a guess here. This is the end of the day for Egan Bernal as he pulls off hard right, looks over, and Narvaez now has to do from 800 meters all the way into as far as he can. So Narvaez has to do some math too, right? Hayter's got to start to really think about problems right now, because at 800 meters to go coming out of this roundabout, that's asking a lot for Jonathan Narvaez to get him all the way to the finish. So Hayter's got to start doing a little bit of worrying and hope that he doesn't have any fast guys on his wheel. We'll see Ethan Hayter look over his shoulder. As he's looking back, he just sees Roman Bardet back there, so he doesn't have to worry about that kid because he knows he doesn't have his kind of speed. Up front, now all of a sudden we see Narvaez look back about the same time, hoping his sprinter's still on his wheel. Narvaez got to do some fast calculations. Now, you can't pull 100% with 600 meters to go. You still got to keep things under control because you got to get your sprinter into at least 300 meters to go, 350, hopefully, at least that. Well, Ethan Hayter, we see him start looking back again, and all of a sudden, Jonathan Narvaez gets him into about 350 meters to go. We see Ethan Hayter look back over his shoulder. He comes out of the saddle, sits back down just a little bit, coasts a little bit further, then does one big hit all the way into the line to win stage 2 and take the race leader's yellow jersey here away from Tobias Foss, who was a couple seconds still in front of him on the general classification, but with the time bonuses, that won't be enough. So Ethan Hayter will win the stage and put himself in the race leader's jersey. Now let's back the camera up just a little bit more, because who got second, who got third on the stage? Well, I told you already, with about 1K to go, that was when Arusso from UAE Team Emirates was battling with Mühlberger. Then he was battling with Bardet. Then, as we come up into the roundabout, come through that's when Egan Bernal pulled off. This is when we saw Olney come up. Olney comes up and starts battling with Romain Bardet for position. We see the sprint start all over again for a second time here, and you see Bardet basically bumping elbows with his own teammate there, Olney. I don't know what Olney was thinking. You're a knucklehead up here. Bardet's your GC rider, and he's getting time bonuses here if he can make it to the line. Now, just behind him, Arusso. Arusso did some more battling to the left side there with just about 300 meters to go, again with Mühlberger, and then pushed the Movistar rider out of the way, started his sprint. When we look at the second place bike throw, it's Arusso winning second place, getting second place time bonuses. Third's Romain Bardet there, and to round out the podium here at today's stage. But when you think about it, Bardet probably could have easily had second place time bonuses. Okay, he was never going to win. Ethan Hayter was just brilliant on today's race and had a magnificent, anything less than messy, you could call today's stage magnificent, marvelous, beautiful, whatever you want to call it. Egan Bernal, Jonathan Castroviejo, and Jonathan Narvaez did an amazing job at the finish of today's race to look after Ethan Hayter, so there was no beating him. But could Romain Bardet have been second on today's stage if it wasn't for his young knucklehead teammate back there battling and bumping elbows with him? Next time, only don't come up and pass your teammate just up there with 300-400 meters to go. That's just causing chaos. So today's race, we see Jumbo-Visma did a ton of work for absolutely no reason. I don't know, the director, I'm sure that the concussion he got after falling out of his bed this morning probably has worn off, and he's starting to ask himself, what was I thinking about today's stage? Why did I put my team on the front when you know Ethan Hayter's Ineos team would have ridden the whole stage? And tomorrow's a time trial anyways, and I have the world time trial champion on my team, Tobias Foss, that could just win the stage tomorrow if he's got good form. And if he doesn't have good form, well, he wasn't going to get in race leader's jersey after today's stage 2 anyways. So we'll have to wait and see what tomorrow's 19-kilometer individual time trial holds in store for Jumbo-Visma, whether or not if they can get Tobias Foss into the race leader's jersey, because they were knuckleheads throughout today's stage 2. Now, when we're talking about Ethan Hayter, I think the guy's on good form. He might even possibly win tomorrow's individual time trial and keep the race leader's yellow jersey with the way he was talking so calm and so relaxed, and the way he looks so fantastic going over today's climb. It's going to be a good stage battle tomorrow to see who ends up in the race leader's yellow jersey, and there's a few more mountain stages to come after that. So make sure you like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next edition real soon.